Quite a busy business week for everyone, especially for women. Now, according to statistics, women in Nigeria hold about 4.8% of managerial positions. And according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, only 22% of organizations actually try to increase levels of female workforce mobility. So, why is there a scarcity in the system of women in business? Is the system broken? We hope to get answers and perspectives to this particular question as we talk to Toyin Sani, who is the Group Chief Executive Officer, United Capital Group, who is talking to us about women in business. Good morning to you, and thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
So, is the system broken? Taking a look at those numbers, statistics from Nigeria shows that only 4.8% of women are in managerial positions, and according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, only 22% of females are in those strong leadership positions.
Inadequate or insufficient representation of women in boards and in management is not an Africa-specific or a Nigeria-specific problem. Globally, women are still way behind men, both in boards and in management. I guess the difference is that in some of these other jurisdictions, there have been concerted efforts made to close that gap. A study, for example, in the UK a couple of years ago said that if we allowed the growth in positions being held by women in management and board to continue at its current pace, it will take about 70 years to catch up. Now we're talking about more advanced economies. Now we have a much a bigger problem here, clearly, with just 4.8% women represented in management. So what can I say? What I would like to say is that organizations need to have a program, a well-articulated program and documented program to achieve greater inclusiveness and diversity in management and on the board. And one of the recommendations in the UK, for example, is that there should actually be disclosure in annual reports of the level of representation. That is the percentage of females in the entire institution, the percentage in management, and of course the percentage on the board and the target. So I think every company should have a target to close the gap. And I'll tell you the reasons. It's enlightened self-interest. There's so many benefits to having more women on the board and more women in management. So this is not just a case of women agitating for a larger share of the pie. This is a case of what is best for companies.
I remember I asked the same question when last week was International Women's Day, and I asked this question. I'm going to ask you again. Do you think women are ready to take up leadership positions?
I think there are many more women who are ready to take up leadership positions than the women that are represented right now in leadership positions. So definitely women are ready. Now, does that mean all the women are ready? No. But are we saying that all the women that are ready have been taken up and put in those positions? I would say no. Companies need to have more women in management, first of all, and on the board. Statistics all over the world have shown that companies that have more women on the board and in management actually outperform the other companies. And this is a consistent trend that has been seen. Outperform in sales, outperform in return on equity, outperform in return on invested capital. And we're not talking about, we're talking about outperforming to the tune of 42% for sales, 66% for invested capital, 53% for return on equity. So why do we want to underperform our peers when there is something that we can easily do? Now, I'm sure you're wondering what is responsible. First of all, governance. The trend is that there's improved governance when you have more women in participation. The presence of women, of course, women's attitude we see things differently from men. And you can't take an informed and the best decision when you have not had an access to the different shades of opinion about the matter. So we're talking about improved governance, we're talking about improved performance, which I've talked about, we're talking about improved response or better response to the market, because the market is not composed of men alone. The market is about 50% composed of women.
But then, taking a look at the markets, we find more participation, male participation, for instance, in equities trading, even bonds and even the fixed income segment of the market. So it always seems as if the men know how to adjust the numbers or push the numbers better than the women. Women, for all intents and purposes, always run away from mathematics. And so it's always, not surprising to see more male stockbrokers than female stockbrokers, for instance.
Okay. First of all, when you talk about improved participation in the markets, you need to remember that financially, women have been disadvantaged over time. So we're talking about power to invest. Now, that first of all means that you need to be economically empowered. Now, do women have equal opportunities in terms of educational opportunities? Have they had equal educational opportunities over time in a place like Nigeria or Africa? Absolutely not. Now, the women also all over the world, you have also seen that even the starting levels for women, the starting pay for women is lower, even when they come in with equal qualifications with the men. So we need to deal with some of the cultural issues. We need to deal with some of the inequalities in the financial, even in the investment, in the education of women. But where am I going? It's a problem that needs to be properly articulated and clear goals need to be set. I'm not insisting on a quarter approach to this, but I'm saying that companies should disclose what is their policy with respect to diversity in management and on the board, and they should articulate a plan. They should set a target and say, in 5 years' time, for example, we would like to have a 25%. That's a good place to start,
Okay, so let me put you on the spot now. What's the policy for United Capital with regards having more women in leadership position? Yes, you are the group CEO, but how many other women are there on the board?
Significantly, many women are in top management of United Capital. The policy is parity. The policy is to give every woman as fair a chance as we give every man. So, for example, within United Capital, we have 4 businesses, and then we have a group CEO. And for the most part of the last 3 years, we've had 3 out of 5 as women. So okay, between the group CEO and the CEOs of the other businesses, we had 3 out of 5. Now, one of the women recently took on up a political appointment as a commissioner in her state, and we replaced her with a man. But I can assure you that on the average, for every key division and department, you find women occupying very senior positions in United Capital. We're definitely committed to gender parity within the system.
Do you think that is also replicated across most investment firms like yours? And do you think that something can be done to improve the number of women occupying managerial position, kind of like banking on women, if you'd like to put it that way?
Yes, definitely. I think we all need to bank on women. I think, like I've said, that companies will do better. They'll perform better. They'll have better governance. They'll be able to respond better to the market if they have more women. The government, the companies, and groups need to be invested in mentoring more women, sponsoring more women, encouraging more women, and of course having policies that show and encourage women to take up those positions. There's a lot to be done, and we all have a role to play.
You also have to remember that apart from being a manager or a group CEO, you're also a mother. You have to run your home.
Absolutely.
So how do you balance work and the home in such a way that none suffers, but then you still attain your potential as a strong, confident woman who is confident enough to hold her own, whether in the office, in the boardroom, or at home in her kitchen?
I'm sure you know that women are gifted multitaskers. It's one of the gifts that we have. And what we need to do is to be more organized in how we maximize that gift that we have been given already. So a woman needs to recognize that she's a multidimensional individual and that she needs all her goals to be accomplished to feel fulfilled. So obviously you will not feel fulfilled if your children have not done well and you have done well in your career. Now, we have been deceived in the past into thinking it's either or. Now, one of the messages that I like to push out, which I pushed out in my book that I launched recently, Yes, You Too Can, is that you can have it all as a woman. You can have a balanced home and you can have an excellent career. It's all about prioritizing the things that are important to you and making sure that you have assistance with the things that do not have to be done by you personally. So delegate more, the things that are less important, prioritize the things that are important. Now, engage with the key stakeholders, your family members, for example, and your primary assistants at work to make them understand that these are my goals and these are my priorities. And I assure you that I'm not going to drop the ball on any side of the table. So we need to engage more.
Okay, on a final note, you know that one of the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the goals is gender equality.
Sure.
Now, this year's theme for International Women's Day was 50-50 gender parity.
Sure.
Now, we know that that might not be achieved all the way
in the immediate
future. Yeah. So we're seeing 4.8% of managerial positions here in Nigeria. And we're looking, this is already March. So a couple of months down the line now, do you think that this number is going to improve based on all the conversations and all the chatter that has been coming out from the international scene, from, of course, the domestic scene as well, and from individuals as yourself? Do you think this number is going to change in the very near or maybe immediate future?
I am optimistic, because one of the things that you would have noticed in the way the IWD was celebrated this year is that there's increased awareness, there's increased commitment. We have more, not just women, but men also, with the men that we call he's for she's, men coming out boldly to say that they are committing to gender parity. We can't get to 50% in 1 year, but definitely I think between now and say 24 to 36 months from now, we should see that statistic improving, inching up gradually. But Rome was not built in a day. We know that we're not going to jump up to 40%, overnight. It will take some time. Yeah.
Toyin Sani, thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Toyin Sani is the Group Chief Executive Officer, United Capital Group, giving us her perspectives on the world of business with regards women.